All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listener. Good morning, Nee-Sha Roo. My name is Claudio. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C. From the studios in Fairfax City. We're very humble and grateful that Nee-Sha Roo accepted our invitation to our show. Welcome to the show.
Hi, so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you. And so let's usually start with the same question every interview. How, we've been living in this crazy world for the last 2 years with COVID, the pandemic. Some people believe in it, some people do not believe. As a touring musician like yourself, your inability to travel that much, inability to tour, at least here in the United States, all the venues open up in September, October with some limitation. But how's the COVID has affected your personal life, your life as a musician with the COVID, and how you holding up?
Yeah, it was definitely an adjustment. When the pandemic hit, I I was just releasing an EP, and I ended up releasing it like a month into the pandemic, and that wasn't great timing. I was hoping to tour. I had shows lined up. I had some festivals lined up and everything, and it just wasn't happening. And I think I felt very dispirited at the time, and I felt very, drained by obviously everything that was happening. I also wasn't really in the headspace for a lot of people. Really kind of embraced that time to be prolific, productive, creative. But to be honest, I found the whole experience so anxiety inducing because it was such an unsure time. It was scary. And I ended up just trying to kind of like chill out and hibernate a little bit during that time, in order to kind of, I guess, make the next steps, but also just in order to like protect myself mentally, I think, from everything that was happening.
Yeah.
Um, then I actually just started writing more. I think maybe the second half of the pandemic, I was writing, and then I took the EP and I ended up creating an album, amalgamating that.
Yeah.
And now I haven't, and I recorded that over the pandemic. So the second half was better when it was kind of a more creative process, and I felt like I was really maybe embracing that time to be able to create
Yeah.
something, make new work, and everything. But the whole thing was really anxiety inducing, and it was really intense, and it definitely I was not hustling the whole time. I wasn't trying to make the most of the time. I was just trying to get through it, okay, and be like, okay, if I come out of this all right, I'll be winning.
Well, I'm glad you stick with it because so many bands that I have interviewed in the past, they disappear. They say, well, I'm not going to make money as a musician. I'm not recording, or I don't have the funds to do it. I better go plan B, or go to school, or get a job, and do so. For a lot of musicians, unfortunately, they the music career ended because for that reason. So
Yeah, it's a really hard thing to stay in it. I mean, I think the most true thing that was said to me was just like the most important thing to do to stay in this business is just to stay in it, to hold on if you can, because it's really easy to not really easy, but like it seems very natural to walk away at several points. And I did. I definitely I had took a break for a couple of years as well and decided I wasn't going to do music anymore, and then I came back to it. But I think it's like being on a mechanical bull. You just have to hold on. It doesn't matter how well you do. It's just holding on is the most important part.
well, we 2 years later, we're alive and listen to the music, sing to show. So we made it, but unfortunately, a million people all over the world, didn't make it. The venues were closed. Musicians couldn't tour. People that depend on touring to make a living, they were non-existent, and it was very, very difficult. So I'm lucky we made it. So were you born like in a musical family, and how old were you when you began perhaps taking piano lesson or guitar lesson?
I was born into a family that loved music. My parents, when I was growing up, didn't really play instruments, but there was a piano in the house when I was a kid, and my dad had a guitar. Um, and so I guess, I think I just absorbed it from my family. My aunt as well used to send us these amazing
Yeah.
tapes, and that kind of gave me a very diverse taste in music, I think. Um, my brother. My brother is a singer. Yeah, my brother was like a professional singer. So it was a musical family, but I did feel like I kind of it was not like I think in Ireland as well. Like if you kind of end up in a musical family, you play music together and you kind of like jam, like maybe you have sessions and stuff like that. We definitely didn't do any of that. We were all very kind of separate in, maybe our personal love of music or our embracing of music, but it was musical, like it was a music loving family for sure.
And then when you were in the equivalent of high school here in the United States, were you a part of a band, or what kind of music were you listening to at the time?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I did have a band for like a hot minute when I was probably about 18. I think I did when I was a teenager, I entered like there was like a school concert. I remember and me and my friends did that, and we played some songs by like we played a PJ Harvey song, played an Eels song. I can't remember what else, but that was probably reflective of what I was listening to at the time, like PJ Harvey, a lot of Eels, Flaming Lips, Beck, big Beck fan. Uh,
Yeah.
those were very formative artists for me. Radiohead, um, yeah, well, Fiona Apple as well, hugely influential for sure. But those were the kind of bands I was listening to, and but I probably wasn't in like a proper band until I got into my 20s, and then I was in a band for a while, and then I went solo.
And then did when you were, I don't know, 17, 18, you were finishing high school, you have the option to go to school, or music was the only way to do it, or you thought, well, I will give the music a try before I commit to university, or family pressure to go the academic route versus the bohemian music life?
Both my parents are artists, so there was no pressure to go the academic route.
Yeah,
Um, like I kind of rebelled by going and doing business and arts management. That was my first entry into college.
yeah.
I don't think I was good enough to go to music school. I really thought I didn't do music for my exams when I was a teenager. And I just thought, that was for people who were like classically trained pianists, and I wasn't going to go for that, and I wasn't going to be an opera singer or whatever. And at that point, there was one modern music school, but it was quite far away, and I didn't think, I was going to be able to make that work. So yeah, I ended up going to college and doing business and arts management, but it was an art college, so that was great because there was everyone in all the different arts, everything animation, fine art, and sculpture and photography, and it was a really creative place to be, and like a lot of kind of really cool people and I made a lot of friends from that for sure.
You remember who, what was the first gig that you ever, I mean, not that you performed, but you end up getting paid, and you sort of,
The first gig that I ended up getting paid for,
yeah, yeah. You remember?
that's a good one. Um, I think I did. I think I won, if I remember correctly, I won a battle of the bands in my college, like like local like venue. They had like a venue within the university, and there was like a little like battle of the bands. It was songwriters basically, and I
Yeah.
won that, and I got €50, and I was like, wow, holy shit.
I'll make some money here,
Yeah, I could make some money. All I have to do is screw it. No. That was probably. But then I think the first time that I felt like a legitimate like musician as I did a support slot for a band in Baker Street, which is quite a big, when I was like probably about 22, 23, I think. I did a support slot for a band in Baker Street, which is a bigger venue in Dublin. I think it's a couple thousand people or whatever. And I got paid for that. We got, you know, as it was the band that I was in, and that felt like that was a moment where I felt like, oh, I'm a legitimate musician. This
Yeah.
is
So that was your big break, and then
a big break. And then the band split up, and then and then we started again.
at the time you were just doing gigs in Ireland, or you had the opportunity to, let's say, play in, I don't know, in the UK, London, and more venues.
Yeah, we I've mostly played in Ireland for definitely the majority, but I went on a small UK tour several years, like a good few years back, with my friend Sive, and we did like a little English tour, and now you know in the States basically doing a tour at the moment. So, but yeah, it's I'm excited to do more and more touring. Uh,
I got you. What's your creative process? You are in the car driving and you listen to us on the radio. You begin playing piano, writing lyrics without music. What or all the above? How the music
how do
comes
I?
to you?
You know, just having an emotional crisis,
Yeah,
probably. I think, you know, uh, getting into your comfort zone in general is really good for your creativity, whatever that is, and trying to work out what that comfort zone is. For me, it's probably staying up till 3 or 4 in the morning and eating junk food, and you know,
really.
getting emotional. You know, that's really where my, like, I like to write really late at night. You know, like I feel really creative at like 2 in the morning, and that's, you know, everything's really quiet, everything's really still. I can really get into my feelings. I can really get into, you know, process shit.
Yeah.
So a lot of late nights and a lot of like snacking and a lot of being in bed, and that is where I write. That's I've written the majority of my songs that are written in bed, you know, in my bed.
You say being in the comfort zone. Well, but in a way, you gotta be out of your comfort zone to put yourself out there at 3 o'clock in the morning and put yourself in somebody else's shoes or whatever, right? Or
Sure.
confronting your emotion. I don't know how it works.
Yeah, I think that there's like two places for a songwriter, you know, like there's the bubble where you create and you know you're really just working working out things with yourself. You know, you're really just like getting into it with yourself, like you're trying to process your own feelings, or you're trying to capture something in your creativity, depending on whether you're doing things that are like autobiographical or not, or conceptual. And then there's like the outside world when you're presenting that work, and that's a whole different kettle of fish. You know, those are two different modes, and they definitely are for me. And I'm it's taken me even years to feel comfortable with the second part of that. I still find it tough to, you know, embrace presenting my work, you know, and being vulnerable in front of a crowd, and allowing that to be the thing that it's all about, because the whole thing you do, you know, music is to connect and to be in that vulnerable space, and to, you know, let yourself be vulnerable with other people and with an audience. But as human beings, we're just programmed to not want to do that, to not want to be vulnerable. So you're fighting with yourself as a performer to be like the rawest form of yourself, because that's where like the deepest connection happens. But at the
Uh,
same time, you're like, I want to protect myself, and I'm really worried that everyone is going to think that this is terrible, or that I'm stupid, or you know that they're not going to respond, and they're not going to, I guess, accept the invitation to create that space or to connect. So I think it's an interesting, you know, journey trying to get okay with that.
The same thing happened to me in many ways. I'm very shy, and I didn't want to open myself. And now here I am interviewing people all over the world, and I'm talking about the personal life and stuff like that, and my personal life. And um, in a way, I think as a human being, we need to go inside and confront our demons and our ideas and our insecurities, anxieties, whatever. And
Yeah.
that's what make us human, I suppose, right? So, share your life, where you're dating somebody, you're married, or getting your first job. You need to go out there and then try to make it happen. Otherwise, it's not going to happen, right? So, in my case, although I'm very shy, I said, well, if I want to put this together, if I want to, do this reality, because music is very important to me, I need to, start polishing my craft and start calling people and getting some people won't understand my accent or not, and then I want to make it happen. So I did, and that's the best thing that ever happened to me. What we're talking about the pandemic, the best thing that happened to me was the pandemic. And I'm so sorry that a lot of people died, but in a way, this radio project and interviews I didn't during the COVID, and it was great because I was at the house, I was working from home, and calling people all over the world. I got a hold of a lot of people, and I open up to the world, which is great. That's the only ways to make it, I suppose. If you're an artist, you need to write very lyrics that are very profound, and you're exposing yourself out there, to critics and audience, and open up and stuff. Sure.
Absolutely. I mean, the pandemic was a deeply, tragic and I think transformative time for a lot of us. And I think, one of the positives that may have come out of the pandemic for a lot of people is that people felt more like they wanted to ready to kind of leave behind the fears and the things that didn't serve them, because it felt like such a high crisis time, and it was, that it felt like, okay, well, I'm wasting my time not living my truest self or experience in this world. So, I'm going to do that. And I think that a lot of people did, I know so many people who just, that was kind of the time that, out of such tragedy and pain and fear and like just, I guess, chaos, it was just like, they were like, okay, I'm going to do this. And so many people moved, they moved countries, or they switched careers, or they, just did loads of things, had children, like a lot of people were like having these life-changing experiences in this time because it felt, it felt like this is the time to make those decisions.
Yeah, gotcha. No, absolutely. Feel free to elaborate on the album Lilith, and then why you decided to record that album to begin with, before we go into more detail.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a re-release of my first record, which came out a few years ago. Um, it was my debut record, so I guess not. I'd been in a band in my early 20s, that was grand, but it wasn't happening, or just wasn't working, and um, I was by myself again, and I was also, I'd gone through a breakup. I was single, and I just started writing songs, and it wasn't really. It was a whole new set of songs. It wasn't really for anybody. I wasn't. I had no kind of idea of whether it was going to turn into anything.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think everybody says that, but I really didn't. I didn't know what direction I was. I really wanted to write something for me to express my experience of what it was like to navigate these intimate and relationships in my 20s, a real bridge between kind of youth and adulthood, where you're trying to grapple with just like long-term relationships and like real, like, life-changing relationships, that are like domestic and, different, from when you're young, and everything is really, you know
Yeah.
starry-eyed. And then also my experience as a woman, and how I felt about gender and gender stereotypes and sexuality, and perception of that, all of those things I was confused, and not confused about, but I was, really pondering, and they ended up kind of coming out in these songs. And I found myself with this collection of songs, and I was I'd gone back to college to go to music college, and actually this time, and I started playing some of these songs live with my housemate, who became my bandmate, Carl. And then someone saw it, a guy called Elder, and he was like, I think you should make a record. And I was like, okay. And he introduced me to Liam, who became my long-term producer. And we decided to put together the record. I had like, it was really, the budget was really small, and so it was really hard like to do, because we had to do it in such a short amount of time. But it was kind of oddly exciting. I mean, the whole record itself was done in like 7 days. So it was like really, really fast. And we had gone in with just the bare bones tracks, because we wanted to build it in the studio. We'd done some pre-production, done some rehearsal. We kind of had some ideas about what we wanted to do, but a lot of it was kind of, especially like with the drums. The drums was kind of worked out, but everything else was, really on the fly and quite experimental in the studio. So yeah, it was a really exciting process, and I really liked working with that, because it felt like you were making decisions instantly. It felt like it wasn't a case of like hacking out something for months on end in a rehearsal space, and then transplanting that into the studio, and then kind of going like, did that sound better in the rehearsal space, and did it, like, do we need to do this, and like try to get it so picture perfect. We were allowing for mistakes and for, experiments, and a lot of the things on Lilith, a lot of the guitars, a lot of things, were not plans, and just happened in the moment. And I like, some of the songs even weren't supposed to be on there. I mean, the last song on the record, Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down, was, I I played that song for someone, and they were like, "Oh no, it shouldn't go on the record." And then I was just playing it in between takes, and producer and Liam was like, "What is that? Do you want to just put it down?" And I did that. I just put it down by myself, playing the piano, and that ended up, being the perfect song, I felt, to end the record on. And Oh Sun wasn't even supposed to be on it, because it ended up replacing another song that didn't work out. So we ended up just going like, okay. He was like, "What do you got? Do you got any more? Have you got any more songs?" I was like, "I have this." And so I did that, and then we ended up writing the chorus in there, and it just all came together. And we didn't even have the drummer at that point, so we between me and Carl, we just set up the drum kit, but like set it out, just toms and snare, and we just hit it, we did it ourselves, just played the
Oh,
drum. And it was really fun, and those experiences, I think, in the studio, that's like true, like, playful creativity. And I think that brings you back to why you like to play music, why you like to do it, because it's like it's fun, it's like it's play. So yeah, that's a bit about the how the record came together.
that's a great story. Have you ended meeting Jerome Frost for Tangerine Dream? Well, his kids. I mean, his dad is very famous, Edgar Frost, who passed away. But the reason I mentioned that is Tangerine Dream is one of my favorite band. I have interviewed about 20 people or so that have played with Tangerine Dream over the years. So I know I'm going to be meeting and interviewing Jerome in during the summer in Berlin. So and he's
Awesome.
yeah
He's,
he's a very good guy, and yeah.
well, it happened sort of. I signed to a label called Schoolkids Records,
Yeah,
based in North Carolina, and Marty Wilson Piper from the church is also signed to Schoolkids. Then
yeah,
Marty and Jerome are really good friends,
yeah,
and they were like, doing some stuff together. And Stephen, who runs the label, met Jerome through Marty. And when we were working together on Lilith, and we were talking about getting some remixes, basically, he'd sent the record on to Jerome, and Jerome really liked it, and he said, he was like, "This is really cool, and I'd like to do a remix," and we were like, "All right." So he did a couple, and it was awesome. I love what he did with the tracks, and really brought them somewhere different. Especially like for you, it was a completely different vibe, and it's so ethereal, and it's really
yes,
beautiful, really
yeah.
cool.
It came out very good. I mean,
Yeah, I'm really
he
happy.
he
And
he. Plus Jerome, although I don't know him personally yet, he's a very good person as well. I mean, I of course I know the band. I met his dad back in the day, and Tangerine Dream so famous, but he's a very good person, Jerome.
yeah,
So
no, it's like it was like a dream. I mean, you know, a Tangerine Dream is their seminal band forever. Like, what can you say? So it was just I nerded out to get to work with him. Him and John Ignello. Like, it was just I felt overwhelmed with just gratitude, I guess, that I got to work with these people, and that they dug what I was doing. It was like, wow, really, it was very I guess it's like very validating in ways, to feel like two people who are so exceptionally talented could feel like you're worth investing time in.
I get you. I have um, listened to several of the interviews and comment about the album, and your voice is so unique. Very distinctive, full of emotion, and it's very unique. It's
Oh,
very.
cheers. I appreciate that. Yeah, I guess I've been told I have a definitely a strange old unique voice.
Yeah, and that's what make you.
Yeah. Well, I think when I was a kid, I think I used to sing and do choir or whatever, and I think I always sounded just like an old warbly lady, when I was like 7. So now I'm just stepping into that space as an adult woman.
Yeah, yeah. I think your voice had been compared to Nate, Kate Bush's, or Nick Cave, or PJ Harvey's, and so on and so forth. So, man, that's an honor. It's a privilege to somebody say that to you about this your style, your voice, and right.
I mean, that's a lot of impressive name checks there. I love all of those vocalists. I mean, I was a huge PJ Harvey fan. I still am. Growing up, and Nick Cave, and I think I definitely probably I was hugely influenced by both of them, and Kate Bush as well. Like, I love they're all phenomenal artists. And I think I think growing up learning to sing, I probably listened to just like a lot of like Motown, to be
Yeah,
honest, like Southern Motown and some soul and jazz and stuff like that. I mean, that was there was a lot of mix of that, growing up, being played in the house and in rock. So I think, but how I learned to sing, I mean, I was obsessed with the Commitments as a child, and that kind of got me really into Motown, and kind of what made me want to sing like that. I just wanted to kind of be in that movie. And so I think that's where maybe that started, that sound maybe.
yeah. I want to ask you a little bit about your life and a little bit of a personal question. I can, I read somewhere that you are outspoken about ADHD and
ADHD, yeah.
yeah, and I tell you because it runs in my family. I mean, we are, I don't know, all of us, but the majority are ADHD, a little bit of autism, a little bit of Asperger. Um, in many ways, in society, you look down as a wild kid who couldn't stand still or this or that, or whatever, and they give you a pill every day to concentrate. That's I was born that way, and that's a gift in many ways to me.
Mm.
I have never taken any medicine, but that's the best thing that ever happened to me. Be born that way. As I'm talking to you, I'm solving problems in my head and figure things out, and it's although you're labeled differently, and it hurts sometimes for me or you to stay on track and concentrate on the task on hand, whatever you're doing, and whether you take medicine or not. That is great. That's like a gift if you know how to unravel that and then make it work for you. And in my case, I didn't make it work for me. There are days that are very difficult. I need to talk to myself. Okay, I have a test in front of me. I have an interview, but when I'm not that, concentrated to do well in whatever I'm doing at the moment, that's my mind goes wild, and that's the reason that I put the radio. That's the reason that I'm interviewing people. I have so many other projects. I'm a computer scientist, so I make a living as an engineer, and that's the best thing that ever happened to me. Although it was very difficult to accept it and to live with it, because I was labeled, wild kid. I couldn't stand still, when I was 5 years old, right? So, and it wasn't. There's a manual in psychology, the DSM-4, that it wasn't at the time they didn't have an entry. You were labeled like a wild kid, right? So and then DSM-4 and DSM, many psychiatrists look into the stuff. Well, there's something called Asperger or HTC or autism, and these kids are labeled differently a little bit, but they manage well. I end up, although my parents thought that man, maybe I will never graduate from high school or I wouldn't make any in my life. 30 something year later, I have 5 college degrees. I went to the best school in the country, and I have done very well with myself. So I figured out how to unravel, how to make something and make it possible. So that's my experience. Feel free to what it means to you. And
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that. Um, for me, I think that it was a real relief to get the diagnosis because I got my diagnosis late,
yeah,
and because of that, I think that I spent a lot of time in my life thinking that I was just failing at being like everyone else, rather than realizing that my way of being in this world and navigating the world and thinking and whatever working was just different. It was just a different way, and
yeah,
it didn't make it any less valid. And it meant that I was able to do some things, even maybe better than other people. But um it was hard, I think, growing up, because in Ireland ADHD is just not really, it's not diagnosed regularly in children when I was growing up anyway. And I don't know how things have changed, but I don't think I think it's still underdiagnosed in Ireland, and it's doubly underdiagnosed in women, because oftentimes, because of the way that we're socialized, um, the symptoms that people instantly associate with ADHD tend to be like what they assume for the masculine or whatever. For yeah. Um, so like sometimes a lot of times, like women can present as sort of, and it's the same with actually like Asperger's as well, like being on the spectrum, but like they present as sort of more daydreamers, like it's more inattentive ADHD than the hyperactive ADHD. um and that's more common a lot of the times in women, and so then it's less likely to be diagnosed. Um, I it has been such a wonderful thing to embrace it and realize that this is what I've been like and what's been going on this entire time. And it has changed my life to realize that and to know fully um, how my brain is working, why it does the things that it does. And it's not that it's just a fail. Like when I have those tough days, it's not me failing at being just, a regular person. It's dysfunction. It's a form of dysfunction, and that's fine. Then there's ways to navigate that. When you know what that dysfunction is, you can you find ways to deal with it much easier than if you don't know what's wrong with you, or you don't
Totally.
know
Yeah.
what the situation is, or how you're different, or how your brain works. And I found that like a lot of, I have a lot of neurodivergent friends as well. So there's a whole like for a long time when I when I was younger, I feel, they're especially magnetically drawn to certain people. And it was only when I was older that I was like realized that it's just like I'm just very magnetically drawn to other neurodivergent people because we see the world a lot of the time the same way. We understand how to talk to each other. There's no I think when you sit down with someone else who's neurodivergent, there's a lot less. You're not. You can just kind of go straight to it, because there's less worry about like being misconstrued or misunderstood, because you're able to just kind of lay it out and take things very, well, I found, take things very like literally and straightforward. You're not worried about the social anxieties and the, you know, having to navigate certain social cues that you might not fully understand or get, I guess. So yeah, I mean, I feel really comfortable in that diagnosis now, and it wasn't a struggle to get it like as in I didn't feel sad like upset that I was ADHD or that I was neurodivergent. I was very relieved. But I did feel a great sort of grief, I guess, in a weird way for all the years that I wasn't afforded that ability to embrace that and to understand myself better.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's why I think, I'm really passionate about being outspoken about it because I think of like myself as as a younger person, and if I had had that diagnosis earlier, like whether you're medicated or not, just to understand yourself better is such a gift, and it's
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Yeah.
a one.
Well, that's make you unique. Your unique voice, and then having being different in the world, and being successful, quote unquote, in the eyes of society, and then do what make you happy. For me, it was music. I don't, as mentioned before, I don't play any instrument. I don't know how to read music, but I've been listening to music for the last 50 years, and has given me a lot of satisfaction. And embrace the spectrum, so to speak, and run with it. Some people, believe it or not, some people prefer not to know.
Yeah,
Uh, uh, I don't know who I am to make a decision for them, but some people prefer, if I don't know, if they were to have cancer, they prefer not to know that they have cancer, and so they don't want to deal with that. They will die one day, right? But like all of us, but other people prefer to know. Well, I have diabetes. I need to, do this, do that, do exercise, whatever. But unfortunately, people don't kind of live in denial and prefer not to know that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I prefer to know.
yeah.
I'm an engineer, so I have my
I
mind is
want to know all the things.
want to
Yeah.
know how the stuff works, right? So
Well, I mean, I think when it comes specifically to um, anything that relates to your brain working differently, um, and whether that's, regards to like mental health, like anxiety, depression, like or neurodivergence, that's um, all can affect your, how you get through day to day. Um, I think that it's always helpful. I think for me, I think it's always helpful to be able to just know, and then you can navigate. It's like, I have like I also have like, you know, anxiety. I have a general anxiety disorder, and that's it's good to know that, because it means that when I'm in situations that will trigger that anxiety, I know how to deal with them
Yeah,
and
yeah,
to best protect myself in
absolutely. Yeah,
those moments. But like, everything, it's up to anyone how they want to live their lives and embrace what works for them.
yeah,
uh, I hate to think of anyone suffering, you know I guess needlessly, when they, without kind of like feeling that they have not, that there's something wrong with them, when it's just brain chemistry, and it's just,
yeah, 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 yeah. As you can tell right now, my interviews are different in the sense that I don't go to all the hits, because that's boring. For me, it's important to know the human person behind the instrument, behind the guitar, behind the. That's what I ask. I open up myself and I ask kind of, you know, uh, question about themselves, because I want to know the musician, the person, you know, uh, behind the instrument, not just the hits, you
yeah,
know, number one, number two, how many records and all that. That is out there. Everybody can look at Google, how many number one hits or two or three or whatever, how many people go to show. That kind of, I want to know that. Looking back in your career, as a professional musician, what moment are special to you? Any regrets, things you would have done differently? And
um
easy to say than done, right? Looking back, it's very easy.
I
It's
mean,
very easy to connect the dot looking backward, but it's very difficult to do it connect the dot going forward. So
well, regrets, I think I just wish I probably, if I could go back, I just wouldn't be so hard on myself.
yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing. I think, I spent a lot of time, you know before my first record, or when I first put it out, just being way too hard on myself, and way too, I think the music industry makes you think that there's just like this ladder, right? It's just like, you're always trying to get to the next step. This step isn't, is not good enough. You got to get to the next step, and when you get to the next step, everything's going to be okay. And then when you get there, there's another step, and when
right,
you get to the next step, it's like you think about it and you're like, oh no, like it's okay. I'll feel good about it if I, as long as I write this record. And then you're like, when I make the record, it'll be okay. And when I gig the record and I get a gig, and when I get my first festival gig, that's when I'll know that, I'm valid and I'm good. And that's when, and then it just keeps going. And it's really tough, I think, to stop and say, it's the making of it is the thing. The
gotcha.
making is the thing. And
Well, the
it's,
journey versus the destination, right? So
yeah, exactly. It's the journey. I mean, we're in a society that really, like, programs us to think of the world this way, and to think of life this way. Like, that it's just like, first you do this and you get that, and then you get to this career point, and then you get to this career point, and you're constantly, and it's always like there's always a next step, and then you're
yeah,
gonna be happy, and then you're gonna be satisfied, and then you're gonna feel valid. And um I think I would like to. I'm trying really hard to make sure that I stay in the space of, feeling just really grateful for everything that is happening now.
mm,
But I think in the past I have definitely suffered from just feeling like I'm not good enough, or that I'm being and I've just been too hard on myself, saying like that I need to be at this particular point, or marking it by external things rather than internal things. And I think that's probably my biggest regret. But I'm really glad that I'm at a place now that
yeah,
I can embrace that.
yeah. I mean, you're doing well. Maybe you're too hard on yourself, and the you have a lot of gigs now. across the ocean. You're in America playing and gigs and going places, and you made it. I mean, it's, looking back, the time maybe you thought, I doubted myself. Who will listen to my stuff? Or why should I open myself about this or that? Kind of the lyrics of your last record. But you did it, and you should be very proud of it.
Thank you. I think music is like it's the one career probably maybe like it's one of the in the arts in general like where it's like you unless like people don't mark you as being successful or we put this pressure on ourselves that you're not successful unless you reach like a certain intensely high level of success, which
Yeah,
is serious, like it's just like you wouldn't think about that with anything else. You wouldn't be like, I don't know, like if you're somebody who was like I'm just trying to think like a mechanic or something, and you'd be like, but you're not the biggest mechanic in town, and you don't own all the mechanic, like
sure,
business
sure.
garages. Like, well, like you can be a pretty good mechanic and
Yeah,
good living and do that and be known by only the people in your area. Um, and I think we have to look at that and in sort of like a like look at how we look at success when it comes to musicians because then it's just giving people like sending them out to have sort of a sense of like that they didn't make it. I hate the concept of making it, like that kind of like because you might make it to someone and not made it to someone else. It's really about your own personal success and like what your kind of idea is and reevaluating your idea of success, I think. um so yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to stay in that place where it's just like everything that happens is really positive and great, and not kind of think of it as in an ambitious way, just kind of be like, okay, this is wonderful that this is happening and I'm really into it. And you know
and living the moment, enjoying the moment. It's for me also, and for many people, perhaps we live in the past or we live in the future. Things that I regret that I did stupid things, or things that I would like to do in the future, whatever, tomorrow, next week. But live in the moment and be happy, and then enjoy the success or the failure, quote unquote, in the on the eyes of society, and be happy. Be a happy human being, I suppose, whatever the profession that you chose. And of course, like in all professions, there are great medical doctor, great engineer, and terrible engineer, terrible lawyer. Everybody aims to be, a U2, a Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, or Depeche Mode, and so forth. But those are kind of exceptions. How many bands don't make it? How many
yeah,
sport players don't make it? How many soccer players don't make it? Don't make it. So quote unquote.
yeah,
It's you can be happy and make a good living and be a good musician. Little by little, you start building your fan base, and before you used to do 3 gigs a year, now you're doing 10, 20, and you play in Europe, you play in the United States, and you're coming out with the next record. You're doing well. You'll be happy with it.
yeah. No, I mean, I'm this has been an amazing experience and amazing year, and signing with the label and everything
Yeah, absolutely.
has been just like pretty magic, so, and more than I sort of expected or dreamed could happen. So
Yeah.
I'm, I'm happy out.
So what is coming up from you? And after you finish this tour here in the United States, you're going back to Europe. You're staying here, or
Yeah, no, I'm going back home to
yeah,
Ireland, and I'm doing a lot of traveling for work for my other job, which is I work in festivals and festival production.
yeah,
And then I'm heading to I'll be playing in Latitude as well, so in the UK, which I'm
yeah,
excited about. But I'll be doing like I'm working like a literature festival when I get back to Ireland, which will be fun.
and then are you planning on working on writing new material for the next album, or
I have it ready to go. The album's made. So
Wow.
record is so it'll be coming out, I don't know, sometime in the next year period, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well,
Uh, but yeah, no, I'm really excited. I got to work with an amazing team of people on this. You know, Rian Trench, who's amazing multi instrumentalist and producer, he's playing
yeah.
drums. Daniel Fox from Gilliband is playing guitars and bass, and um, yeah, Jamie Hyland from Mail, and Liam as well, my producer who I worked with on the other record. They're all there, and we had a really wonderful time, you know, making the record and kind of like locking ourselves into a studio for a little bit in the countryside, and it was, yeah, so it was a really exciting process, and I'm really excited to I guess put that out next.
Good for you, man. Feel free to mention the website where,
Oh
or
yeah,
the record label where the listener can buy your music and get a hold of you and that kind of stuff. So
yeah. Well, you can buy the tapes on Schoolkids Records.
yeah,
There's four, and it's on limited edition tape. So there's
yeah,
not that many of them. We've actually sold a lot of them so far, so I don't know how many's left, but
that's
you should
good. Yeah,
go check them out.
yeah,
And I spend most of my time on Instagram. So
yeah,
like if you're looking to follow me, it's Nee-Sha underscore Roo, at
yeah,
Nee-Sha underscore Roo for Instagram. And yeah, that's it really.
yeah.
That's where you can find me on all the things.
Yeah, and I will put the link on the description once I upload the video to the radio. And it was very nice talking to you, and you are a great musician. You're doing well. Keep on working hard. You know, release a new thing, and perhaps do a live album, and you know,
Yeah.
keep on doing what you like, and you will be do very well in your life. So it was very nice talking to you. Say hello to Steven as well. That we exchanged so many emails. I don't know in person, but I need to check it out his record label as well for
Yeah.
other music. But
Amazing.
it was very nice talking to you, and good luck to you both.
Ah, thank you. Okay, sweet things.
Yeah.
Okay.